Major Robert Cowboy Stout was supposed to take pictures, nothing more. Just one quiet reconnaissance pass over the northern airfield on Peleliu, snap a few frames for intelligence, and head back to USS Hornet before anyone on the island even realized he'd been there. That was the plan on paper. That was what his commanding officer expected. And for 20 minutes, everything looked exactly like the brief said it would. The sea below was calm, the air smooth, and the smoke from earlier bombardments drifted like thin fog over the treetops. Stout brought his F-6F Hellcat up to 8,000 feet and banked into position, the automatic camera humming behind his right shoulder. Intelligence had said the airfield was abandoned, bombed out, cratered, unusable. So he expected to see wreckage, rusting Zeros with their wings bent upward, maybe a few useless hangars still smoldering from previous raids. Instead, the moment he looked down, his stomach turned to ice. Below him was not an abandoned airfield. It was a fully armed hornet's nest. 40 Japanese aircraft sat wingtip to wingtip across the tarmac. Mitsubishi Zeros, Nakajima B-5N, Kate bombers, A-6M fighters, some with engines already turning. Fuel drums were stacked in tight clusters around them. Ground crews hustled between aircraft with carts of ammunition and belts of machine gun rounds. Mechanics stood on ladders, fitting bombs to hardpoints. Nothing about it was abandoned. Nothing about it was inactive. They were getting ready. And Stout knew exactly what they were getting ready for. In 72 hours, 28,000 Marines would hit the beaches of Peleliu in the most brutal, amphibious invasion of the Pacific War. The transports were already en route. The ships were already massing. If these 40 aircraft got airborne, they wouldn't just harass the invasion, they would slaughter it. Stout didn't need a briefing to understand the math. 40 Japanese aircraft meant dozens of strafing runs on helpless landing craft packed with Marines shoulder to shoulder. It meant bombers diving on transport ships with nowhere for the men below to hide. It meant burning oil slicks, exploding Higgins boats, Marines drowning because shrapnel tore their life jackets open. He had seen it before at Tarawa. Men packed so tightly into landing craft that a single bomb killed 20 at once. The difference now was simple. He was the only American in the sky, and nobody on the Hornet had any idea what was waiting down there. By the time he flew back, filed his report, waited for command to assemble a proper strike, brief the pilots, arm the aircraft, fuel the bombers, and launch, those 40 Japanese planes could already be in the air. They'd disperse, hide, or attack. The Marines didn't have hours. They barely had minutes. Stout took one more look down. The airfield was practically begging to be set on fire. Planes were packed tight enough that you could walk from one to the next without touching the ground. Fuel drums sat in neat rows like someone had arranged them for a fireworks show. Ammunition crates were out in the open. Ground crews were exposed. One spark would turn that airfield into an inferno. His Hellcat carried toothy 400 rounds, about 12 seconds of fire, enough to kill a few planes. Not enough to kill 40, but maybe enough to light the fuse. His training screamed at him to follow orders. Do the recon, take the photos, return home, let command handle the strike. But he wasn't thinking about orders. He was thinking about the Marines, who were going to hit those beaches, boys no older than 19, men carrying 80 pounds of gear, trapped in boats with no cover and nowhere to run. He thought about the Japanese pilots who would be diving on them with clean passes, first attack guaranteed. He thought about the casualty numbers that would follow and the letters that would go home to mothers who'd never know their sons died because a pilot decided to follow procedure. Stout didn't need more time. He shoved the throttle forward. In one motion, he leveled out, rolled the Hellcat into a steep dive, and let gravity pull him like a stone. The altimeter spun downward. 7,000 feet, 6,000, 4,000. He felt the airframe tighten as the speed built. His engine screamed. The wind clawed at the control surfaces. At 2,000 feet, he leveled off and dropped even lower, flying just above the treetops, so low the leaves blurred beneath his wings. When the airfield appeared through a break in the jungle, the Japanese ground crews looked up in confusion. A lone Hellcat? No run-up? No bombers? No formation? Some froze, some pointed, a few sprinted for their anti-aircraft guns. Too late. Stout lined up on the northern row of Zeros and squeezed the trigger. All 6 Browning machine guns erupted at once, the recoil vibrating through the cockpit. Tracers tore across the tarmac, punching through wings and fuselages like paper. He walked the fire directly into the closest Zero, its fuel tank erupting in a burst of flame. Then he shifted a hair left, sending the next burst into a stack of fuel drums. The explosion looked like the jungle itself was vomiting fire. The blast lifted the Hellcat and slammed it sideways. Flames shot 60 feet into the air, engulfing everything around them. Zeros ignited like matchsticks. Bombers cooked off in secondary detonations, sending shockwaves across the field. Stout yanked back on the stick, climbing hard as the anti-aircraft guns finally opened fire. Black puffs of smoke burst around him as shells detonated at altitude. A 20-millimeter round tore through his tail. Another grazed the left wingtip. Warning lights flashed across the panel. But the engine held. And below him, hell had opened. The entire northern half of the airfield was burning, flames leaping from plane to plane in a chain reaction that the Japanese couldn't stop. But the southern half of the airfield still held 20 more aircraft, and half his ammunition remained. Coming back was suicide. The Japanese were ready now. Machine gun nests were manned. Light flak was tracking him. Any sane pilot would have taken the win and gone home. But the difference between 20 destroyed aircraft and 40 destroyed aircraft could mean the difference between hundreds of Marines dying or surviving. He didn't hesitate. He rolled inverted and dove again. Anti-aircraft fire greeted him immediately. Walls of tracers that looked like glowing ropes lashing the sky. He weaved violently, feeling the Hellcat shudder under each hit. A round punched through the fuselage behind him. Another took out a hydraulic line. A third shattered part of the tailplane, but he held course, leveled out over the southern edge of the field, and opened fire. His tracers ripped through 2 bombers, shredding their wings and sending fuel spraying like mist. Then he walked the fire across a fuel truck. The explosion was so violent, it flipped a bomber upside down. Ammunition crates ignited in chain bursts. Bombs cooked off in rapid detonations that tore entire aircraft apart. Within seconds, the southern half of the airfield was burning as violently as the north. His guns clicked empty. There was nothing left to shoot, nothing left to do but survive the escape. The Hellcat felt sluggish as he pulled up, controls stiff, hydraulics slipping, smoke trailing from somewhere behind him. But he'd done it. The entire airfield, 40 aircraft, fuel, bombs, trucks, structures, was engulfed in one continuous sheet of flame. A column of black smoke rose thousands of feet into the sky. He turned toward the ocean and began the long, limp back to USS Hornet. Every mile felt like a gamble. The engine temperature fluctuated. The oil pressure dropped. The stick felt mushy. His landing gear might not come down. He might have to ditch. He might not survive the ditching. When Hornet finally came into view, he radioed the tower. Damaged aircraft. Hydraulic failure. Requesting priority landing. He brought the Hellcat in hot. The landing gear deployed halfway. One wheel locked, the other didn't. He slammed into the deck hard enough that the metal buckled, catching the second wire. Deck crew ran toward him, stunned by the damage. The tail was shredded. The fuselage was punctured in a dozen places. The paint was scorched from flying through explosions. Officers demanded answers. Why did a recon pilot come back shot up? Why did he break radio silence? Why was he returning from a mission he wasn't even supposed to fire a weapon on? Stout kept it simple. The airfield wasn't abandoned. I destroyed everything on it. The officers stared at him. How many aircraft? 40. They didn't believe him until the reconnaissance photos came back the next day. Every plane on the northern airfield of Peleliu was gone. Burned-out skeletons scattered across the tarmac, fuel storage obliterated, structures flattened. Japanese records later confirmed the number. 40 aircraft lost in under 8 minutes. No other single pilot in World War II had ever done that. The Marines, who hit the beaches 3 days later, had complete air superiority. They didn't know why. They didn't know who saved them. They just knew the skies were silent when they expected death to come screaming down. Historians estimate Stout saved 500 to 1,000 American lives, maybe more, before the first Marine even touched the sand. And he did it by doing the one thing every military manual tells pilots not to do. He broke the rules. He trusted his eyes instead of the paperwork. He trusted his judgment instead of the chain of command. And he trusted the mission more than he feared the consequences. Major Robert Cowboy Stout didn't set out to be a hero. He didn't set out to make history. He just refused to let 40 Japanese aircraft take off and turn an invasion into a massacre. 8 minutes, 40 planes, 1 man, and an inferno that changed the course of the battle before it even began.